working by lamplight before the sun rises in a Northern California vineyard, gathering eggs for market on a New Hampshire poultry farm, inspecting cover crops on a Wisconsin field, growing organic produce and raising chickens in the middle of Atlanta, a late afternoon grain harvest in Washington State, and sunset with cows grazing on a Vermont hillside. This is what organic agriculture looks like in America. And these are the farmers and ranchers helping to meet the increasing consumer demand for organic products in this country. To be certified organic, producers follow regulations outlined by the USDA's National Organic Program. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service can help both certified organic and transitioning producers with voluntary science-based conservation practices that enhance biodiversity, mimic nature, and utilize natural processes. These can include the use of cover crops, crop rotations, and nutrient management plans to help build healthy soils. And because organic farming is an ecologically based system, organic farmers eliminate the use of most synthetic fertilizers and pesticides, sewage, sludge, irradiation, and genetic engineering. They opt instead to work with nature, using practices like mulching, companion planting, insectaries, and cover crops to deal with weeds, insects, and disease. And since organic farmers also rely on dependable water sources, NRCS can help with effective irrigation water management plans tailored to a farm's specific needs. They can also provide support for organic livestock producers on pasture and grazing management, diverse pasture plantings, fencing, water facilities, and shelter. And NRCS can provide both technical and financial assistance with high tunnels, allowing farmers to extend their growing seasons, benefit plant health and vigor, shelter crops from weather extremes, manage pests, and help protect against drift from pesticides and pollen. Organic agriculture. It's good for you, and it's good for the land. To learn more about NRCS assistance for organic farmers and ranchers, visit your local NRCS office or find us online at nrcs.usda.gov/organic. NRCS, helping you help your land organically.
Okay, just let's start. Good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this second session of our organic webinar series. This series is part of our efforts to extend outreach and share opportunities for organic and transitioning to organic producers. We want to remind you that this session is being recorded and it is also made available through YouTube page, NRCS New Jersey. If you miss a first session, you can access it on YouTube by looking for Organic Webinar Series Session 1, or if you have access to the chat, I have posted the link there. In today's session, we have NRCS agronomist and grazing specialist, Caitlin Farbotnik, who will talk about the Organic Transition Initiative and other NRCS practices. And we also have Kristen Lake from the Farm Service Agency, who will discuss the Organic Certification Cost Share Program and maybe other opportunities available through FSA. We do welcome any questions, so feel free to post any questions you have in the chat, and we'll get to those at some point. Caitlin, if you're ready, the floor is yours.
I am the state conservation agronomist and grazing specialist for NRCS in New Jersey. So I'm going to cover a little bit about our transition initiative. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about some important standards and planning activities you might be interested in knowing about. And then feel free to ask questions in the chat if you have access to the chat throughout, or interrupt me if you can take yourselves off mute. All right. So first, I'm going to cover a few important standards and activities. The reason I want to go over this instead of just jumping right into the OTI and our general organic initiative is because a few of these activities are tied to those programs, and I want to make sure that everybody understands some of the background information, and then I'll talk more about those programs. But right now, we're just going to do a general overview of those programs once we get into it. Fran, who is our programs person who knows everything about our programs, she's going to do a much more in-depth session next week, specifically about where to go to sign up for the programs, how to sign up for our programs, how you'll know if you're eligible for the programs, and all of that good stuff. So if you want to hear more about that, make sure you tune in next week for all of that information. But first, I'm going to cover our organic management standard, which is code 823. So you might just hear us refer to it as like, oh, the 823 standard. And the reason I'm going to cover this one is because this is specifically tied to the Organic Transition Initiative. So first thing you need to know about this standard is that it is an interim conservation practice standard, which means we are still trialing this standard. That's important because if any states want to trial the standard in their state, we need to request that standard from the national office, and we need to justify why we need that standard in our state, and we need to submit a version of the standard that we want to use. So this means that these standards could vary from state to state. Most of the time, though, the changes are pretty minor because the agency does value consistency across the nation, and especially within regions. So we try to work pretty closely with our neighboring states. So if folks are farming across state lines, or if you know somebody that's farming in another state, their standard might be a little bit different, but we try to keep it similar. But just know that it could be a little bit different. Also, because it's an interim standard, they do tend to get updated more frequently than all of our other standards. So right now, we are updating this organic management standard as it is. If you go online and view the organic management standard for New Jersey, we are updating that version right now. So somebody that has this organic management standard in a conservation plan or a contract from prior years, that what the requirements that they have might be a little bit different than somebody that signs up and has this 823 in their plan or contract in future years. So just keep that in mind. All right. So what is the standard, right? The definition here is on the screen. You probably can't read that little screenshot of the actual standard there on the right-hand side. So it's to manage and improve natural resources on land in and adjacent to organic production using methods which integrate cultural, biological, and mechanical practices that foster the cycling of resources. It promotes ecological balance and conserves biodiversity. So what exactly does that mean? Well, essentially, this standard is a catch-all standard. It can help you, the farmer, fill any gaps in organic management to implement organic management methods that are needed to treat a resource concern in ways that are not captured through our other standards. So some examples of this might include trap cropping or companion cropping. So maybe say that you're struggling with stink bugs, or you know that once you transition to an organic system, you are going to struggle with stink bugs. Right now, maybe they get sprayed with a conventional chemical, and obviously you're not going to be able to do that in an organic system. So, what can you do about that? Maybe it's like you're really concerned about your tomatoes or some crop like that. So whoever's writing your OSP plan or maybe your DIA 140, which I'll get into just a minute, what the DIA 140 is, suggests that you plant cowpeas as a trap crop for those stink bugs. That could be an example of something that is done through this organic management standard. That's not covered under any of our other standards. On similar lines, if you're struggling with Colorado potato beetle, or that is something that you might be struggling with, and you want to do a companion planting of like tansy or something like that, that's a pest control method that is not covered under any of our other standards. So that's where this 823 standard can come in and help you do that. Another example, I'm our grazing specialist, so I really like talking about livestock. So another example would be integrating livestock for soil health. A great example of this is all the studies that are out there talking about chickens and their benefit to running chickens in orchards, like especially different types of like nut orchards or groves. It's beneficial to the chicken, the trees, and the soil. So obviously, you would have to consider FSMA regulations anytime you're integrating livestock into any sort of operation where there's food being produced for, direct consumption. But that could be an example of something that you would do for soil health that's not covered under any of our other standards. So are there any questions on 823 before I move on? And I can't see the chat. So Ty, is there any questions?
I don't see any questions in the chat.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Okay. So a couple other conservation, these are planning activities that I want you to be aware of. There's what we call a CPA 138, which is a conservation plan that's specific to supporting organic transition. These plans are very site specific. Your planner, who we call technical service providers, would come out to your farm, look at all aspects of your farm. Sorry, I got something in my throat. They would evaluate all of the resources on your farm. They would determine if you have any resource concerns on your farm, and talk with you about any opportunities for improvements on your farm. They will also discuss your goals for the farm too. That's a really important part of this plan, is your specific goals for the farm, your economic goals and your environmental goals. And then they'll help you come up with ways to fix any problems that you have and to meet your goals. The planning process does take a lot of time. It does take a lot of back and forth. So you'll get to know your technical service provider pretty well if you get one of these plans written. But that's good, because you want a plan that is very useful to you, and you're not going to get that if you don't have a lot of that back and forth communication. So after a pretty comprehensive analysis of your farm, the technical service provider, your technical service provider, will develop a list of alternatives, list of different ways you can solve all the problems and meet all the goals that you have talked about. And this will address any of those resource concerns. It'll make sure that if there's anything that you need to do in order to meet the USDA certification standards, that will, you'll have a plan to be able to meet all of the standards you need to meet if you're missing any. And then one other key thing to remember is that these types of plans can be written for your farmstead, which some people also call it the production area, or a homestead. I've also heard that area called. It could be written for cropland, it can be written for pastures, and it can even be written for grazed forest land. So the next plan that is important to understand is the DIA 140, which is a transition to organic plan. I'm sorry, the transition to organic design, which I think of it as a continuation of the CPA 138. So the CPA 138 is an analysis of all those resources on your farm, and then you get a complete list of activities, conservation practices that you can implement to fix any resource concerns, to meet your goals. And then the DIA 140 takes you a step further, where you then identify which practices, activities you want to move forward with, and it outlines just those alternatives that you choose to implement. So we're kind of paring down from the CPA 138 to a smaller list, and the 140 is going to focus on that smaller list. And these alternatives can be pretty simple, or they can be pretty complex. You know, they can range from something like a cover crop, or it could even be something like a waste storage facility. Anything really that you need to help that transition process and fix resource concerns would be included in that plan. So I do want you to think of that as the deeper dive into those practices that were identified in the CPA 138. We call it the design, but it's not going to give you like your engineering designs if you're doing like a waste storage or something like a waterway or diversion. It's not that kind of design. Think of it more of like a holistic design or view of your farm and the steps that you need to take to implement those practices. That's what the 140 is going to give you. All right, any questions on that before I move on?
Caitlin, there's no questions in the chat, okay. But just for the benefits of those who don't know what a technical service provider is, would you mind just touching a little bit on that?
Yeah, sure. So the agency has what we call technical service providers, obviously, or they might also be called TSPs. That's what we call them for short, because we love acronyms here in the government. So they are a group of folks that are kind of like an extension of our own planning staff. They don't actually work for us. They are independent contractors, really, but they have been vetted by our agency to be knowledgeable and have the skills to write these kinds of plans. So, you know, we have a whole bunch of different kinds of these plans. These organic transition plans are just one example. We have folks that write nutrient management plans, soil health management plans. There's all sorts of different plans that the TSPs, the technical service providers, could write for us. And well, they really write it for you, but we can provide financial assistance to get that plan written. And since I will say that since everybody that is a TSP, they work independently, they might charge different prices around the state as well. So if you call a couple different TSPs, they might ask for different payments. So it's nice to shop around a little bit if you're thinking about signing up for any of those CPA, DIAs. And we also have some other CMAs that can help with just soil testing, soil health testing, analysis of waste storage structures, things like that.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry, I should have explained that earlier. Alrighty, so now I'm going to move on to just an overview of financial assistance programs. Again, Fran is going to dive into this a lot more next week, and she'll be able to talk about it way better than I can. So make sure you tune in next week if you want more information on these. All right, so I want to make it very clear that just because someone is an organic producer, it doesn't mean that the only opportunities for financial assistance are the fund pools called Organic Transition or just our general organic fund pool. All of the fund pools dependent on what is the target of your project. So, you know, some of our fund pools are more focused on certain wildlife species like our golden winged warbler, our black duck. Those are also specific geographic locations. There are some other fund pools here that have specific geographic locations like our NWQI, our National Water Quality Initiative. So it depends on a little bit, you know, the focus of the project and where you're located in the state. But an organic producer has all of these programs that are available to them. So I don't want anybody thinking that, oh, just because I'm an organic producer doesn't mean that you're only limited to the two fund pools that have the word organic in it, because that's absolutely not the case. The organic fund pools just give you even more opportunity to access help and financial assistance than other non-organic producers or folks that aren't thinking about transitioning to be organic. So I just want to make that very clear. so that everybody knows that you do have the ability to apply for any of our programs that you might be eligible for. And, you know, all of these fund pools too, some of them have little quirks about practices that are required or not required. Like I said, the locations, and when you call your office, which if you don't know where your office is, Fran will cover that next week. Your planner, it's their job to know all of the ins and outs of our programs. It's their job to know all of the ins and outs of our standards. You know, you shouldn't really have to worry about any of that. Let your planner worry about that, and they will help guide you through the contracting process and the planning process. They're really here to help you and to take all that worry off of you. So you really shouldn't even have to worry about all of that. But I just wanted to let you know that there are a lot of opportunities for organic folks beyond just the words, just the fund codes that have the words organic. But I am going to focus on the ones that just have the words organic in it. So first thing I'm going to talk about is the Organic Transition Initiative. So again, just like our standard, this might change from year to year. We have not received guidance on next year's OTI yet. I can say that it's been pretty consistent for the last couple of years, and we haven't been given the heads up that there's going to be any major changes for next year, but I can't guarantee that everything I tell you today is going to be true for next year just because we haven't been given that guidance yet. So this is what's true, that has been true for the last couple of years. So first, who's eligible for OTI? There's a lot of confusion about this one here. It's unlike some of our other programs. So the folks that are eligible for OTI are only farmers or land that is actually transitioning to become USDA certified. So if you are under the exempt category, you are not eligible for OTI. If there is land that is already certified, that land is not eligible to be in the OTI program. However, if say half your farm is certified organic already and you're ready to transition the other half of your farm, that other half of your farm could be enrolled in the OTI program. It's not like your in or out situation. There could be some parts of your operation that could be eligible for OTI. And the land uses that are eligible for OTI include crop, pasture, forest, farmstead, and associated ag lands. So payment limitations for the OTI program. Some of our programs do have payment limitations beyond the normal farm bill limitation, which is $450,000 per farm bill. The OTI does not have any additional payment limitations, which is kind of nice. The OTI program, it does have eligibility requirements and ranking requirements, just like any of our other programs, but it comes from a national pot of money or allocation of funds rather than a state pot of money, which makes it a little bit less competitive as of now. So as of now, it's a little bit less of a competitive program than some of our other programs, which come from a state allocation. And then, you know, how long are these contracts? So they can be anywhere from 1 year to 5 years. It really depends on the needs of the farmer and that land. So if you are a farm that is 2 years into your transition period and you only have a year left and you only have a couple things, like a couple small things that you need to do, or maybe you just picked up some new land that you got an affidavit saying, you know, nothing has been applied to this land for the last 3 years and you're like on the fast track to transition, that might be a 1 year contract. If you just are deciding to start transitioning and there's a lot that you need to do to transition to be organic and to be comfortable getting your certification, and you're not ready to do all of those things in just a couple of years and you want to space it out, that might be a 4 or 5 year long contract. So that's really going to be up to you and the conversations that you have with your planner and how fast you're comfortable moving with the contract. I would mention though that once you've transitioned, you're no longer eligible for the OTI program. So just be very honest with your planner about, if you're in year 2 of transitioning, maybe that needs to be a 1-year contract, not a 5-year contract, because it's after we've been in this a couple years, we're running into situations where we might have to cancel contracts because folks aren't eligible to be in the contract anymore. So again, that just comes down to communication with your planner and what needs you have on your farm. Okay, so what kind of practices can we plan under the OTI program? Well, really any practice that's in your OSP or in your DIA 140, that in-depth dive of the chosen alternatives, that DIA 140. So it really could be anything that you need to treat your resource concerns, or that you need to practices that you need in place to become certified. Like buffers are an easy one. That's a very easy example. Do you have buffers in place? No. Okay. Well, we can install some buffers for you. Well, we can't do it for you, but we can help you install those buffers with technical assistance and financial assistance if needed. But those do need to be outlined in your OSP or in that DIA 140. And that is something, some folks, they don't have a very strong OSP, so they'll still come to us and want that CPA 138 and the DIA 140, so they can have a good list of practices that they need to move forward. Because what our planners will do is they'll just take that OSP and look through that. And if there's really no identified practices in that OSP, there's really nothing that we can then take and translate into a conservation plan and contract for you. So you really do need to have a pretty strong OSP, or sign up for that CPA 138 and 140. I would encourage you to do that. One thing that's really important to know about the OTI is that organic management 823, it is required to be included in the contract. So this can get kind of sticky, because if the 823 practice isn't a good suit for your farm, then you wouldn't be able to sign up for OTI. You can sign up for it, but you wouldn't meet the basic requirements for the OTI program, which just means that, your planner can guide you to a better suited program for you. It doesn't mean that you're totally, we can't help you at all. It just means that the OTI program isn't probably the best one for you. And what kind of things are not covered under OTI? So there is a lot of questions we get from folks. There's, a lot of different agencies out there. You're going to hear from FSA in just a little bit. They'll talk about what they've got going on, their top program. They talked last week about what they have going on. And we do get a lot of phone calls asking, can you pay for my registration for this workshop? And no, we cannot pay for just a workshop registration. Everything that we do has to be resource concern based, and everything that we do is providing financial assistance so you can fix that resource concern. So if you have erosion on your farm, we can help, maybe install a waterway, or just seed that area down, maybe cut that water off with a diversion, something like that. Maybe change up your crop rotation to a less erosive crop rotation. Going to a workshop and then coming back home is not going to fix that erosion itself, if that makes sense. So we cannot pay for workshop registrations. However, the top program, through their mentorship program, they can help pay for some workshop registrations. So I think that's where wires got crossed a little bit. We're not the agency that can do that, but there are folks that can do that for you. Another thing that we get asked a lot is like, hey, I'm transitioning to organic. I heard that you can just give me a payment to offset the reduced yields I'm going to get. And no, that's not true either. We cannot do that. What we can do is there are some scenarios through our organic management standard that allow for a foregone income little boost. And so certain crops, if you're growing certain crops, are eligible for that little boost in payment. And the way that was figured out was our folks, the agronomists, the organic folks at headquarters. They worked with the national statistics folks, and organic folks, the economists, the agronomists, and the statistics folks all got together and looked at average yields of organic crops and non-organic crops, and any crops where the average yield was less, that's where they decided these crops get the foregone income payment. So some crops do have foregone income, and if you have a question about which ones they are, I can let you know. The list is pretty long though, so I didn't put it on this slide. Okay, that's what I have for OTI. Is there any questions so far before I move on?
Okay. Sorry, there's no other questions. There was a question that someone asked, can I still apply for other programs if OTI is not feasible for me? But I did answer the question of the shot. It's like, yes, you can apply for different other fund pools and even for technical assistance if that's all you need or want.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that screen, I mean, that slide, you saw all those different fund pools. Again, those fund pools, we don't know. Here, I can go back there real quick. Sorry, I have all these. There we go, right there. Yeah. So, I mean, this might change a little bit for next year, but these are all the opportunities that are available to you. So yeah, if OTI is not for you, man, don't give up. There's so much more out there. So but your planner will help you figure out what program is best suited for you, for sure. Okay, let me get back to where I was. All right, so now I'm going to talk about just our general organic sign up. It's much more simpler, so I only have one slide on this. All right, so again, who is eligible for just general organic? Really anybody that's involved with organic production. So unlike OTI, where you had to be transitioning for organic, our general organic sign up, you can be under exempt status, you can be in transition in status, or you can be already certified. So any of those folks, if you're one of them, you can sign up for a general organic sign up. Payment limitations. There is a payment limitation for the general organic, which is a little bit different than OTI. The payment limitation is $140,000, and that's per farm bill. So right now we're in the middle of a farm bill rewrite. I'm not quite sure when we're going to get our new farm bill, but if somebody has met their $140,000 for the organic fund pool, that doesn't mean that we can't work with them anymore. That just means that they've ran out of money in that organic fund pool. So the overall farm bill limitation for an individual right now, it might change, but right now it's $450,000. So if you did a lot of cropland work with us through the organic sign up, and you maxed out your 140, and say you have livestock and you really need a waste storage, something, maybe we'll put you into the livestock fund pool, and then you still have another $310,000 to play with. So it's not like, again, if this sign up isn't for you, there are other opportunities for you. It's not like just because you're organic, you're limited to these two fund pools. I will say though that this general organic the money comes from the state, not the like New Jersey state, but it comes from NRCS state money, unlike OTI, which comes from that national pot of money. So it is a much more competitive program. And last year we did run out of money in that fund pool. So there were some organic producers that we weren't able to fund because we just didn't have enough money to get through all of our applications. So it is a little bit more competitive. So you might want to keep that in mind. And then lastly, what kind of practices can we do through the general organic? Much like the OTI program, really anything that's identified in your OSP or in that DIA 140, make sure you have a strong OSP, or sign up for the 138 and the 140. Highly encourage you to do that. And like I said on the last one, it can include any planning activities. So that CPA is that initial evaluation of your operation. And that could be a CPA that's focused on organic, like our 130A is focused on organic. We have a CPA that's focused on soil health. And that's just looking at evaluating all the resources on your farm, taking a look at, all your soil, your water, your plants, how you're managing everything, and doing testing, modeling erosion, everything that you can think of. That's what those CPAs do. And then identifies opportunities for you to improve based on the goal of that plan. So is it organic? Is it soil health? Things like that. And then that DIA, like I said, is more comprehensive on just those alternatives that you picked from the CPA. The CEMAs are interesting. Like I said before, too, the CEMAs could help with soil testing, just basic soil testing. It can help with soil health testing. There's a whole bunch of CEMAs that are out there. We've got some ones looking at carbon sequestration. I mean, if you're interested in these, we've got a whole slew of them. We can put the link in the chat. You can click on that and look at all the different ones here. The big difference between OTI and general organic is that organic management does not need to be included in these contracts. It definitely can. It absolutely can be included, but it is not a requirement of the program. So it's a much more accessible program because you don't have to have 823, that organic management standard. If that 823 standard doesn't work for you, it's not gonna, if that's going to hurt you getting into OTI because you won't meet the requirements, but you could still get into general organic if you want. Okay, hopefully that wasn't too confusing and that helped clear some things up. So I'll stop again to see if there's any questions for me before I turn it over to FSA.
There's no more questions, Caitlin, and I did share the link for more more detail about CPAs, DIAs, and CMAs.
Awesome. Okay. Let me stop sharing here. All right, take it away, Ty. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin, so much. That was all great information. And hey, people, do not worry if you missed something or you want to review anything. This is a lot to digest sometimes, especially if it's new to you. But this session it's been recorded and it will be made available on our YouTube page, so you can look us up as NRCS New Jersey. Kristen, if you're ready, I turn it over to you now.
Hello, I am Kristen Lake. I'm the County Executive Director for the Warren, Sussex, Morris County Farm Service Agency County Office. Hold on, I'm just going to try to figure out how to share my presentation. Just give me a second here. Okay, can you guys see, or let me do one. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yep, I can see it.
Okay, perfect. So for organic producers specifically, we only have one program available right now. Just, I'm sorry. Sorry, I have a toddler. We have one organic program available. It's called the Organic Certification Cost Share Program. And like Caitlin said before, we like our acronyms. So that's abbreviated as OCCSP. It provides cost share assistance to producers who are obtaining or renewing their certification under the National Organic Program. What they can do is receive up to 75% of their certification costs, but they cannot exceed $750 per scope. There's a variety of organic scopes, and those include crops, livestock, wild crops, handling, and state organic program fees. So you could receive up to $750 per each of those scopes. Certified organic producers and handlers who pay certification fees during the 2024 program year may apply. So we are looking at, for this year, for 2024, any expenses that you paid from October 1st of last year, 2023, to September 30th of 2024 of this year. This year. The application deadline is October 31st of this year. So just, I don't want anybody to be confused. It doesn't necessarily have to be a 2024 organic certification. It could be a certification for a prior year or even for 2025, so long as that expense was paid within this October 1st, 23 to September 30th, 24 timeframe. And then just so you know, they will come out with another bucket of funding for the following fiscal year as well. This program is paid on a first come, first served basis. So if we get any applications after funding has been depleted, those applications will not be paid. However, there has never been an instance where we have run out of funding, so that's not necessarily a concern that we have in New Jersey. These are some of the eligible costs that we can reimburse. That they would include application fees, inspection fees, equivalency agreement, arrangement requirements, travel for inspectors. Sometimes organic producers have to pay for that. User fees, sales assessments, and postage even. However, we will not pay for equipment, materials, supplies. We will not pay for transitional certification fees. We will not pay for late fees, and then any inspectors that are going out to address violations. We did have a program for transitional certification fees. We did not receive any funding for that this year, but there's always potential for that in the future. We did have that in the past couple of years. How can you apply for reimbursement? You can apply with FSA directly, and also the New Jersey Department of Agriculture accepts applications as well. You cannot apply to both. You can do one or the other. You have to submit an application form. We will need to view your organic certificate. We are going to need to see an invoice that's itemized so that we can see the expenses that you have paid for to be able to determine which ones are eligible. An 80-2047 is just a form that kind of gets you into our system. And then a 901 for legal entities. What a 901 will show us is who has signature authority for the entity. These are our offices. I'm not sure if this webinar is targeting any specific location of audience. So I would be servicing the red here in Morris, Sussex, and Morris. We also do service Passaic, Bergen, Essex, Hudson, and Union. But then these are we have 5 other county offices. If you reach out to my office and you're in another county that we don't service, I will certainly get you to the right person. And I don't have as much to present as Caitlin did, but that's all I have for you unless anybody has any questions. Just before I do address those, I did want to let you know that this is the only specifically organic program that we have. The other program that we kind of have for organic producers, we do have a crop insurance program. It's abbreviated as NAP. It stands for the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program. Not sure how they figured out that acronym, but we will provide insurance for organic producers. The payment for any indemnities do pay out higher than anybody who's not organic, because generally fruit and vegetable crops that are organic are paid for more by the public. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. And I'm sorry, any questions, I'll address them if anybody has them.
I don't see any questions in the chat. Guys, if you have any questions, I think you should be able to unmute yourself, so feel free to do it. Thank you so much, Kristen, for presenting on this. I mean, it was short, yes, but it's as important as what Caitlin presented, so I appreciate that very much. For the participants on the call, please don't forget to register for our next session. I will make sure that I email the link to all of you. In our third and then last session of this series, we will discuss more about NRCS eligibility and program application. And once again, thanks to you, our presenters, and all of you who took the time to attend this session. I hope you have a good night and happy Independence Day.